Another look at Song of Solomon. This time we're going to look at, hold on just a minute, the section from chapter 5, verse 2, all the way through chapter 6, verse 3. We're going to take 2 or 3 weeks to look at this because it sort of divides into some sections and because there's a lot of things to say about it. So let me start. This is a dream sequence, and it's just like an earlier dream sequence that occurred in chapter 3, except it expands on it a lot. So today we're going to compare the dream sequence here and the dream sequence in chapter 3. Talk a little bit about the structure and what's being said. Next week we're going to talk about what the point of it is, and the week after we're going to look in detail at the section at the end of chapter 5, which is kind of another wasf, but this time for him instead of for her. All right, so we're going to compare in today's video, we're going to compare the two passages, the dream sequence in chapter 3 and the dream sequence here in chapter 5. And the point I want to make is that they parallel each other. I mean, there's no doubt that this song is supposed to remind you of the earlier song. But this song takes the earlier song, which is only 4 verses long, really, maybe 5, depending on what you include. And it takes that song and it expands on it. And in expanding it, it makes it more intense and also a lot darker. So if the other one was kind of a dream sequence, this almost gets a little nightmarish at times. Anyway, here's what the other one said. It said, "On my bed, night after night, I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but did not find him. I must arise now and go about the city, in the streets, in the squares. I must seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but did not find him." Now, I suggested last time, and I still think that when she says, "on my bed, night after night, I sought him," she means that she was pining for him on her bed. But I also think there's hints there and here that this is actually a dream, that she's dreaming of him, dreaming of looking for him, dreaming of trying to find him. But it reflects a very genuine desire of her heart. The point of this whole thing in chapter 3 is to highlight that she really is beginning to fall for him, to fall in love with him, to desire him, to really long for him. And so she's got this sense of, I've got to find him. I've got to look for him. I must seek him whom my soul loves. And over and over, she talks about him whom my soul loves and that I sought him but didn't find him. And then it says, "The watchmen who make the rounds of the city found me. And I said, have you seen him whom my soul loves?" So the watchmen show up and she asks them, but we don't hear anything about their response. All we learn is that then she says, "Scarcely had he left them when I found him whom my soul loves." And then this is what she says: "I held on to him and wouldn't let him go until I brought him to my mother's house, into the room of of her who conceived me." So the picture in this whole early passage is about her becoming aware of the fact that she longs for him and that she's going to cling to him. When she finds him, she's not letting him go for anything. She's going to take him back home with her into the place where she's most secure. There's no way she's letting him go. So it's an awakening awareness of her desire for him. So that's the picture. And we have her longing for him and not finding him. We have her longing for him. We have her not finding him. We have asking the watchman, and we have this. And then I left this out here, but we also have then an adjuration to the daughters of Jerusalem. All those things happen again in the new passage. So let's take a look at the new passage. It looks like this. She says, "I was asleep, but my heart was awake." I think that means here I was dreaming. "A voice, my beloved, was knocking. 'Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the damp of the night.'" Notice to me how he 4 times in a row, he compliments her. My sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. It's like it keeps intensifying. You're my sister. You're not just my sister, meaning affectionate, meaning that we know each other, not meaning she's his literal sister. You're my darling. You're my dove. You're my perfect one. For my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the damp of the night. He's standing out there shivering in the cold, wanting to be let in. But this isn't just about his being let in out of the night into her home. It's about being let into her heart. It's about his longing for her. And she responds and says, "I've taken off my dress. How can I put it on again? I've washed my feet. How can I dirty them again?" So her first thought is, I'm in bed. I don't want to have to get up and deal with this. Her first thought is sort of no. But then she thinks better of it. It says, "My beloved extended his hand through the opening, and my feelings were aroused for him." He's not knocking the door down. He's just reaching through the opening, saying, I want you to let me in. I want to see you. And her feelings are aroused for him, partly with empathy, partly with thinking, oh, he wants to get in. I feel bad for him. But partly, I think, with desire for him, that seeing how much he desires her, seeing how much he's looking for her, she responds and thinks, yes, I want to. So I rose open to my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, and my fingers with liquid myrrh on the fingers of the bolt. That's referring to her desire. I was no longer just opening the door for convenience, to make it convenient for him. I was longing to see him also. I went to the door with passion and with fervency, wanting to let him in. And then it says, I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and had gone. So in the first dream sequence, we saw her just searching for him and not finding him. Here we see that he's reaching through the door, wanting to see her, and she runs to or goes to the door, ready to open to him. She opens up and he's gone. So it's a little bit more intense version of I looked for him and didn't find him. He was there, and I was slow to respond. When I got there, he was gone. My heart went out to him as he spoke. It says, I searched for him, but I did not find him. That's echoing the previous one. I called for him, but he didn't answer me. It's like he was right here. Where is he? Where did he go? This is very typical in a dream, right? You hear somebody, you go, you open the door, and then in the dream, suddenly they're gone, and you're looking, and they're nowhere. I'm not sure how much this makes sense for a real life situation, but it makes great sense in a dream. And the same thing is being brought out, her need for him, her desire for him. And then we come to the watchman. Now, last time she just said to the watchman, have you seen him? And then we don't hear anything. But here it takes on a darker tone. The watchmen who make the rounds in the city found me. They struck me and wounded me. The guardsmen of the walls took away my shawl from me. So they weren't just unhelpful, they were actually abusive. Whether this is sexual abuse or just abusive, taking her shawl or what it was, we don't know. But it's not a pleasant experience. Again, I think this is dream. I don't think it means that she wandered out in the middle of the city in her shawl and this actually happened. But if it did, it's still just in a song, so it didn't actually happen. It's a song. But I think even in the song, it's supposed to be that she's dreaming this. The next phase is here, the watchman, and she looks to them for help. They not only don't help, they hurt. They are against her, and she feels what this highlights is how alone she is, how defenseless she is without him. She needs him in every way. Even those around her are now dangerous to her rather than helpful for her, and she longs for his protection and his presence. So now she makes an adjuration. Now in the last one, she closed after she found him. She adjured the daughters of Jerusalem, or somebody did, don't awaken love until it pleases. But here it says, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, as to what you will tell him, for I'm lovesick. So she's saying, I can't find him, but if you find him, would you tell him that I'm lovesick? Now it's interesting because this has already been used before in the book. Back in chapter 2, she said, I'm lovesick. But there was a lovesickness that came from the delight she was feeling. I'm with him. He's cradling me in his arms, and I'm lovesick. I'm just swooning with love. But here it takes on again a darker tone. It's almost like I'm lovesick in a way that I'm dying inside without him. I'm hurting inside. I'm wounded. I'm broken without him. Tell him how much I need him. So again, it's kind of a darker tone than it was before. And then something very odd happens. The daughters of Jerusalem have a conversation with her. And last time, there was this odd thing that happened in chapter 3, she asked the watchman, they didn't respond, and then she says, when I found him. So all of a sudden, without warning, she found him again, which I think makes it sound like a dream. Here, the same thing kind of happens. She says this to Jerusalem. This time, there's a longer dialogue. They ask her a couple questions, and she answers, and then suddenly she knows where he is. No explanation any more than the time before. I think this is, again, just showing that it's not so much a plot of things that are happening coherently as a set of ideas about her desire for him and finding him. So they say to her, what kind of beloved is your beloved, O most beautiful among women? What kind of beloved is your beloved that thus you adjure us? Why do you care so much about him? And she says, my beloved is dazzling and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head's like gold, pure gold. And she goes on and on and on. I've skipped several verses here. It's a wasp. That is one of these love poems going from head to foot. But this time it's not for her. It's for him. She goes through and talks about how lovely he is in every way, finishing up by saying in verse 16, his mouth is full of sweetness, and he's wholly desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So they say, what kind of beloved do you have that you're so much in love with him? And she says, let me tell you about him. And she does this whole thing for 5 verses. We're going to do a separate teaching on that particular wasp in a couple of weeks. I'm going to look at that. But in the meantime, after asking that, move on to the next chapter, because we're still part of the same scene. They ask her, well, where has your beloved gone, O most beautiful among women? Where has your beloved turned that we may seek him with you? They say, this sounds like somebody we should be seeking, or maybe they mean for her sake, but where shall we go? And you would think she would say, I don't know, that's the whole point. But instead, she says, here's where he is. She says, my beloved has gone down to his garden, to the beds of balsam, to pasture his flock in the gardens and gather lilies. Now, that's very interesting because, first of all, she knows where he is. Second of all, she's echoing what happened in the section before this, in the honeymoon passage, in the passage about getting together. It talked about his going to his garden, the beds of balsam. And in the chapter before that, it talked about his pasturing his flock in the gardens and gathering lilies. And all those are erotic pictures and they're romantic pictures about intimacy and the closeness to them. And she says, that's where I found him. That's where he's about, in this place where we are together. And then she says, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Now, she said something very similar to that before, too. Back in chapter 2, she said, hold on just a minute, I'll find it for you. She said, oh, now I can't find it. She said it back in chapter 2, she said, my beloved is mine and I am his. Here she says, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. She reverses it. And I think the focus here, and he who pastures his flock among the lilies, again, saying the one who loves me, the one who's intimate with me. So what she's doing is she's, at the end here, she's not only finding him, she's remembering that he loves her. She's remembering that they are together. She's remembering that they've been united. She's remembering how close they are. So it moves from where is he to remembering the wonderfulness of their union. So if you want to, you can think about this as that she's just woken up and realized, oh, it's just a dream. She's with him after all. So it ends positively. It ends with their being together. But what is the point of this whole thing? That's kind of peculiar. Why are we going through all these? So let me, first of all, I'm sorry, I forgot I had this slide. What we've just done is walked through and compared the two. And let me just encapsulate this a little bit more. In chapter 3, it's a dream. In chapter 5, it's a little bit more nightmarish. Chapter 3 is we see her desire. I sought him whom my soul loves, but didn't find him. Here we get a sense of her longing and her loneliness, her lostness without him. I went to see him and he was gone. I searched for him. He wasn't there, and the sense of abandonment. There we saw his absence. Here we see his absence, the sense of abandonment, the sense of he was almost there, he's gone. There's a little bit of sense, too, of her having caused it. I was too slow to get up. Maybe I just missed my chance. Maybe something went wrong here. There we saw the watchman being unhelpful, but here we see the watchman actually being abusive. There her conclusion was, I'm going to cling to him. Here her conclusion is, tell him I'm lovesick. And then she gives this long wasp for him. He is so wonderful. And there she finds him. But here she doesn't just find him. She finds him and says, I'm my beloved's and he is mine. And he pastures his flock among the lilies. He stays with me. He loves me. He's intimate with me. We are together. So she knows that he loves her. So everything is a little bit more intense. So what I want to ask just for today is, what is the point of all this? Now, the reason this is worth asking is because a lot of people have, I think, misunderstood the application of this passage. There's a lot of people who read this passage as a morality tale to warn wives not to be physically unavailable to their husbands when they're wanted. That, I think, is a complete misreading of this passage. Is it a warning for women to be physically available to their husbands? No, I don't think that's what this is talking about, for several reasons. First of all, this is a dream, not reality. So it's not about her really being unavailable to her husband. It would be about her dreaming that she was unavailable to her husband. So that's not what it's about. Secondly, a loving husband wouldn't respond to his wife's unavailability by just leaving her. You know, if a husband wants his wife to be physically with him and she says, not tonight, I've got a headache, or something the equivalent of that, for him to get vindictive and say, well, then I'm just going to leave you alone and be absent from you and sort of punish you with my absence, that's a totally unloving way for a husband to respond. That is not love. That's just control and borderline abusive if it was carried on in a long term. And it's not how God responds to us either, by the way. So it just doesn't make sense that that's what it's about. It doesn't match the focus of the rest of the book. This book is not about practical marital advice, do this, don't do that. There are some people who read it that way, who teach it that way, but I don't think that matches what the book is about. And by the way, I also don't think it matches the you may disagree with me on this, but when I read this, when you read poetry, ask yourself, what does it feel like? Ask yourself, what is the emotional heart of the chapter? The emotional heart of this chapter is not about giving life lessons for her to respond differently. It's not about, here's the problem, here's how you solve it. The emotional heart of this chapter does look at how she feels that she didn't answer quickly enough, but it focuses on her sense of lostness and need for him more than it does on some sort of morality. It doesn't focus on, so it just doesn't seem like it fits the book to say that's what it's saying here. What I do think it's for is this. I think the point is that this is talking about the need for connection that we have as humans, both romantically and spiritually. Romantically, we have a need for connection romantically. Adam saw that with all the other animals, it was not good for him to be alone, and they weren't enough. It was only when Eve was created from his side, and he said, "This is woman because she was taken out of man." In other words, she completes me. She's the other half of me. We need each other. Now, we can be called to be single, but that takes grace from God, because naturally speaking, we're built to sort of need that companionship. We need to have somebody who shares our life with us. And that's true on a human basis. But why did God build that human need into us? As a reflection of being in the image of God in a broader sense, as a reflection of our need for connection with God. So the deeper truth is that we, more than a need for connection with one another, with another person, with somebody who really understands us and is really with us, is that need for connection with God. And that's the deeper metaphorical truth here. And this, whether you read it as about God or about people, it's about that need. And it's about the loneliness and the sense of abandonment that we feel when, because of the fall, we're separated from each other. So that happens even in a good marriage. There are times when you will wake up and feel alone and isolated and abandoned. It doesn't matter how good your marriage is, because the marriage by itself won't completely fill that hole. And because we're human and fallen. And that happens in our relationship with God. No matter how wonderful God is and how much he loves us, there are times when I will feel forsaken by God or abandoned by God or very lonely. When I have struggled the most, it hasn't been often, but when I've struggled the most with doubts about God, one of the things that's most true for me emotionally is that I feel lonely in the universe when I start having any doubts about the reality of God. There were times in my life a few years ago where I struggled with that some, and that's the predominant feeling. It was this sense of loneliness and that I'm all alone. And the exciting thing is that that's not the truth for us. God is here, real, and with us, but we feel it sometimes. We deal with it sometimes. And I think that's what this passage is partly about, both romantically and spiritually, the isolation we feel from one another and the isolation we feel from God. So what I would like to do is look more at that specific thing next week and talk about the sense of connection and loneliness in this passage and what can we learn from it, because I think there is something to be encouraged by in this. In any case, take a look at it yourself. You certainly can take a different take on this if you'd like, see what you think it's about, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.